What's up, YouTube? I'm here doing my prediction video for RDA versus Lee. Let's start the bottom. The first fight is Julio Arce versus Julian Erosa. This fight, I think Julio is probably going to have a pretty big advantage. I think Arce has the advantage pretty much everywhere, striking, wrestling, and jiu-jitsu. I think Julian's biggest strength is he can turn any fight into a fight, and that always gives him an opportunity to win. But realistically, I just think Arce is just a little bit better everywhere. I think he's just a little bit more technical everywhere. And realistically, I think he's going to either win by decision or eventually get this to the ground and win by TKO or submission. So I got Julio Arce winning by finish sooner or later. Next is Zach Cummings versus Trevin Gillies. I'd probably pick Gillies if he'd fight more regularly, but he hasn't fought in like 2 or 3 years. I think he's been injured for a long time. When he came into the UFC, he was on a real hot streak. He won like 2 or 3 in a row again, and I think he was a pretty big underdog in a lot of those fights, and he showed he had good takedown defense and good striking, but he's been out for a while, and I think Zach Cummings is just, he's too consistent. I think his wrestling's going to be a little too strong. I think he's going to be able to push Trevor against the fence and just grind out a decision. So I got Zach Cummings winning by decision. Next is Patrick Cummings versus Ed Herman, and this is tough to tell just because these guys are so old, and they've both been kind of getting finished a lot recently. Overall, I think Ed Herman's got a big advantage striking. Patrick Cummings has obviously got a huge advantage in the wrestling. I think Ed Herman's got decent enough jiu-jitsu where he might be able to catch Patrick Cummings. Probably not, but it's just tough because, like I said, these guys are both about 40. They're both getting finished a lot more consistently recently. I'm slightly leaning towards Ed Herman just because I feel like, fights start on the feet, and if he's worked on his takedown defense at all, I think his hands are just so much better than Patrick's. I think he'll catch him and knock him out. So I'm going to go lean towards Ed Herman. I think he wins by round 1 KO. Next, we got Mike Trizano versus Grant Dawson, and I feel like in every aspect of this fight other than wrestling, Michael Trizano's better. I think his overall technique, striking, and grappling-wise are better. I think his conditioning overall is better. I think Grant Dawson's best thing is just he makes fights these scrappy wrestling matches, but I think Michael Trizano's got good takedown defense and good scrambles, and like I said, anytime this fight's going to be on the feet, I think Mike's going to have a massive advantage. I think his striking is just a lot better. I don't know if Mike will finish Grant, but I think that he's definitely going to outpoint him on the feet and do enough to keep it on the ground where it's competitive, where I think he'll just edge out every round. I think Mike Trizano is going to win a 30-27 decision. Next, we got Danny Roberts versus Michael Pereira, and Michael Pereira, even though he's taking this fight in short notice, he's gone, I think, like 8-2 or 9-1 in his last 10. He's this pretty tough dude from Brazil. I don't think he's been finished very much. I think he's only been finished like once or twice, both knockout submission-wise, and he hasn't been finished in a while. And he's got a good mix of everything. He's got striking, jiu-jitsu, and wrestling. So he could pull off an upset here, but I feel like Danny Roberts has the exact same style, and he's a little bit better in every area. I think Danny Roberts is a little bit better striking, wrestling, and jiu-jitsu. I also felt like Danny Roberts got screwed out of his last fight where he didn't tap or anything, and he was almost about to knock that motherfucker out, and it's like, the reason why he's coming back so fast is because he didn't get hurt in that fight. I mean, he was whooping that guy's ass. And, like I said, I think these guys, they don't fight similarly, but they have similar styles where they're well-rounded and they mix it up pretty well. But I just think Danny Roberts is going to have a pretty big advantage, especially on the ground, and I think he's just going to edge out a decision, maybe get like a late finish with a submission. Next is Desmond Green versus Charles. Can't say this guy's last name. Charles is a pretty good striker with some decent grappling, but I just think Desmond Green's a little bit better overall in terms of his just fighting ability. I think Desmond's got a big advantage wrestling, and I think his striking technique is a little bit better than Charles. He's not a big finisher, so I think this one's going to decision too, but I think Desmond's just going to edge out every round and win by decision. Next, we got Aspen Ladd versus Sijara Eubanks, and this fight's going to be hard just because I don't know how good Sijara is going to look. She's moving up to 35 probably because they're not going to let her cut down to 25 anymore because she keeps missing weight. And now we're going to see how good she's going to look against chicks that are just naturally bigger than her. I mean, she's looked really good at 25 because she's been beating chicks that are obviously smaller than her and she's not making the weight. Now she's got to fight chicks that are the same size as her. And, she's not just going to be able to bully them around. I think Aspen Ladd's got a huge advantage conditioning-wise. I think overall, grappling-wise, I think Sijara is better, but I think striking, they're probably close. But I'm leaning towards Aspen. I think Aspen's just going to push a high pace. And if Aspen's ever on top of Sijara, I think that's going to be the end of it. I think that if Sijara's on top of Aspen, Aspen's got a good enough defense where she can kind of just defend herself. But when Aspen's on top of chicks, she usually just demolishes them, and I think this is going to happen. I think that sooner or later, once Sajara starts to slow down, Aspen's just going to get on top of her and finish her with ground and pound. So I got Aspen winning by late second, early third knockout from ground and pound. Next, we got Davi Ravos versus Austin Herbard. And I think Austin's taking this fight on short notice. You know, he's a good striker with some overall wrestling. I just don't think he's going to win this fight. I think Davi Ravos has shown that he should be fighting like top 20 guys at this point. His overall striking is solid. I mean, the biggest thing is his jiu-jitsu, his wrestling jiu-jitsu. The dude's a powerhouse. Like, he's great at getting takedowns, and once he gets it there, his control is amazing. He's great at getting rear naked chokes, and I mean, there's a reason why he hasn't lost since he was dropped down to lightweight. He's won like 3 or 4 in a row, and I think he's going to knock it up to 4 or 5. I think he's going to get a takedown the first and win by rear naked choke, so that's what I got, Davi Ravos. Next is Charles Oliveira versus Nick Lentz, and I know Charles Oliveira is probably going to win this fight, but I just can't pick against Nick Lentz when he's fighting against Charles. I feel like Charles is such a bitch when it comes to Nick Lentz. I feel like that first fight just annoyed me so much because it's so back and forth, and then Charles Oliveira blasted him with the knee and like broke his eye socket. You know, the second fight was also super close, and Charles just kind of caught Nick with a guillotine at the end, and I think at this point in their careers, Charles is starting to hit his stride, and Nick Lentz, you know, even though he's looked good, he's getting older. So realistically, Charles is going to win. I just can't pick against Nick Lentz because of that first fight. So I say Nick Lentz catches him with a big overhand right and knocks him out. But realistically, this fight's going to be a back-and-forth grappling match with Charles eventually winning by submission once Nick gets tired. But I'm going to say Nick catches Charles with an overhand right and knocks him out. That's my pick. Next is Derek Kantz versus Vicente Luque. And Derek Kantz is a really fun fighter. He's only lost to really good people, like guys that have fought in UFC and Bellator and stuff like that. You know, he's got a pretty long career. He's like 25-8. I think he's a good fighter. He's got good striking and jiu-jitsu, but I just don't think he's had enough time to prepare for this fight. And I feel like him and Vicente are similar in that sense where they're striker jiu-jitsu guys. I just think Vicente is better in both, and I think he had more time to prepare for this fight. So I think this fight will be fun for however long it lasts, but I think eventually Vicente will get this to the ground and win with like a Darce, probably in the second round. Next, we got Megan Anderson versus Felicia Spencer, and this fight 100% just depends on if Felicia can get this to the ground. I think that if she can, this fight will be interesting, but I realistically don't think she will. I think Megan Anderson, you know, is too big for Felicia. I think Megan will keep it on the feet, and I think her striking's way better, and I think Megan Anderson's just going to edge out all 3 rounds, at least 2 of the 3 actually, and win a 29-28 decision. Next, we got Antonio Carlos Jr. versus Ian Herschel, and Ian Herschel's a great fighter. He's only lost like once, and he's like 12-1 or 13-1. He's really well-rounded. He's got striking, wrestling, jiu-jitsu. He's primarily like a wrestler. But I feel like the problem is his game revolves a lot around his wrestling, and I feel like anywhere on the ground, Carlos has got an advantage. I'd say striking they're about even. I just think Carlos hits harder. But that's the problem. I think this fight's going to hit the ground, and when it does, I just feel like Carlos has a huge advantage there. And once it gets there, I think he's going to eventually sweep Ian and get on top. And once he does, I think he's going to win by like rear naked choke or arm triangle. So I got Antonio Carlos Jr. winning by either first or second round submission. Finally, we got RDA versus Kevin Lee. And to me, Kevin Lee, he's a good wrestler, but I don't think anything else is super amazing. Like, obviously his mount and his back take are probably some of the best in MMA. But I feel like his overall striking game is not super amazing. We've seen it a lot. He gets caught in almost every fight. I also think that if he can't finish guys, he tends to slow down just because unless he can dominate the guy he's fighting, he has a hard time keeping his pace. And I don't think he's going to be able to just dominate RDA. I mean, fucking, what's their faces? Usman and Covington couldn't dominate RDA. I mean, they won respectively most of the rounds when they fought him, but he was able to get up and you know what I mean? They couldn't just mount him and beat the crap out of him. And they were way bigger than Kevin Lee. And arguably, I don't know if their striking is probably about the same as Kevin Lee. Their wrestling is just a lot better. I just think RDA is going to have a massive advantage striking-wise. And unless he's just completely worn down from those fights against, like, Usman and what's-his-face, I don't think Lee is going to stand a match. I think Lee will try to get takedowns. He's not going to get them. And I think this fight will be striking for the most part until RDA wins by knockout. I think it will happen in the first or second round. I think he'll catch him with like a body kick or a head kick and then followed up with like a 1-2 combination and knock him out. I just think, like I said, I think he has a massive advantage in overall speed and striking. And I don't think even if Kevin Lee can take it to the ground, he'll be able to control RDA that well. So I got RDA winning by first or second round KO. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Please like and subscribe.